Hello, readers. Welcome back. Welcome back. We're so glad you're here. Yes, we are, because we're up to a really good part of the book, Journey to Nagwanis. Let's tell them what's been going on. Okay, we will. So, if you remember, Finley and Brogden had just made the delivery of the amber rose to Umbis. And Umbis has told everyone that he plans to bury the amber rose, which is just a chunk of amber, into the dirt. And no one can understand why he wants to do this. He's about to tell him what his plan is. He wants everyone to pay attention to what he's saying. This will be worth everyone's time, said Umbis. He raised his voice slightly to grab everyone's attention. I'm sure you've all heard about the feud between my family, the Rasvins, and the Lorens. Brogden and Finley nodded. Years ago, both families inhabited these 10 trees. The families planted a burning bush in between the two groups of 5 trees when the disagreement occurred. You may be all wondering, why did they plant a burning bush? Why not a fence or a wall? No one responded, so Umbis continued. The burning bush was planted there because the disagreement took place during the harvest season. It would serve as a reminder every autumn of the ire on both sides when the plant blooms its fiery crimson. And if you look up a burning bush, there are these bushes, and during a certain part of the year, it turns red. What most folks do not know is that before the disagreement, a small apple tree had stood in the middle of the 10 trees. In its heyday, the branches of the apple tree linked the 10 trees together. Each family claimed the apple tree as their own when the feud began, and many gnomes came to blows as they attempted to carry apples home. Young gnomes got into serious arguments when they climbed the tree, claiming that the branches on their side were deliberately cracked. Perhaps it was best that the tree finally split into pieces during a thunderstorm. But even then, both families fought over the twigs, the branches, and the blackened apples. And that was when they planted the burning bush, permanently separating the Rasvins and the Lorens. Only then did things settle down. Both sides have existed side by side for years, yes, but in utterly perfect silence. What does the amber rose have to do with this? Finley asked. I'm getting to that, Umbis told him. You see, although the burning bush has kept the peace, it has also caused great frustration. Neither family will cross to the other side. The Rasvins have more than their share of raspberry bushes and dandelions. The Lorens have a surplus of honeysuckle and wild onions. But neither side will trade, and everyone has grown bored with eating only the food that grows on their side. You purchased the amber rose to help solve a problem of culinary boredom? Asked Brogden. No, that's just the background of the situation. The real problem began 2 springs ago, in June to be exact. My eldest daughter, Twilina, was on our side of the burning bush, picking some of the red berries that dangle from the branches. Each family picks berries from their side, but we've always been careful not to venture too far into the bush. We've always been diligent about staying on our side. However, Twilina has always been headstrong, always asking why and why not and so on. Vocal and fearless she is. Umbis's smile held a mixture of pride and helplessness. So she was picking berries, prodded Finley. Yes, that's right. She filled her bucket about halfway when she noticed someone else was there, picking berries from the other side of the bush. It was Sharabeth, one of the Loren girls. She's the same age as Twilina. They both knew of the feud between our families, so naturally they were wary of one another. Twilina, who had been eavesdropping from behind her mother, stepped forward, and she began to speak. We were each collecting the berries, she said boldly. each of us on our own side, when we saw the most magnificent berry hanging in the perfect center of the bush. Not on the Razvan side, not on the Lauren side, in the middle. We both reached for it, but that at that moment, we felt a tingling pass through our bodies in the center of our palms. Twilina paused for a moment, and everyone's eyes were upon her. We each took a step back and gazed at wonder at the berry, and then at each other, and then back at the berry. We could see that the berry was the dividing line between our families. One of us could have snatched it from the other. We could have fought over it. But instead, a wonderful feeling passed between us, one of calm and peace, and of the desire to share the berry. So that's what we did. We plucked it, sat down in the middle of the bush, and ate it together. But we didn't speak to one another. I'd been taught to ignore the Laurens, to never, ever converse with them, and to turn my head the other way if I ever crossed paths with one of them. I'm sure that Sharabeth had been taught the same thing, she said. But you didn't obey these rules, said Brogden. Twilina shook her head. Sometimes we act in a way that's beyond our understanding, I guess. But since that day, Sharabeth and I have met in places all along the dividing line. We share secrets and laugh and string clover bracelets together. She's the best friend I've ever had. My only wish is that we could enjoy each other's company freely. I would like to have Sharabeth visit my house and have a sleepover. I would also like to go to her house, which she tells me has a lovely swing hanging down from one of the branches. We are both quite good at playing the grass reed. It is our wish to perform duets for our families. She sighed. I could only keep my friendship secret for so long. I finally told my father everything. Umbis looked around at everyone and shrugged. Everyone knows the special bond between a father and his daughter, he said sheepishly. How could I deny my daughter her wishes? And will the amber rose somehow make Twilina's wishes come true? Asked Brogden. A smile spread across Umbis's face, and his eyes began to twinkle. If there can be friendship between these two young girls, then there are many more friendships to be forged, Umbis stated matter-of-factly. The time has come for the Razvans and the Laurens to put aside the feud and move forward. He reached for a small spade that was leaning against the side of the tree and began walking toward the burning bush. Twilina, her mother, Brogden, Finley, and a host of other gnomes followed in a line behind them. They whispered among themselves. What was Umbis going to do? Should someone stop him? Umbis led the way carefully through the branches of the burning bush. Then each gnome and one foot held them back so that the next person could pass. They crept over, under, and around and through until they finally reached that dividing line. There were patches of flattened grass where Twilina and Sharabeth had been enjoying each other's company earlier that very day. Umbis halted so abruptly that Twilina ran smack into the back of him, and each person behind her did the same until Umbis was almost off his feet. Then he passed the box to Twilina and began to dig a hole with the spade. From time to time, he would hit a root or a rock, at which point he would exert more force and mutter some words that grown-ups really shouldn't say around their children. Although Brogden couldn't help noticing that none of Umbis's children seemed particularly surprised by this. He kept digging and flipping the earth aside until there was a mountain on one side of him and a chasm, which is like a big hole, on the other. And then he stood up and surveyed his work. The box, please, Twilina, he ordered. Twilina passed the box to her father, and everyone gasped as he lifted the lid and pulled out the amber rose. A miniature red rose, each petal extended in perfection and captured timelessly in a solid block of amber. Umbis's wife reached for it. Her hands seemed to have a mind of their own. However, Umbis realized that if his wife or anyone else got their hands on the priceless treasure, they would not be able to let go of it. So all they got was a scant peek before he dropped it in the hole and began to shovel the dirt over it. No, don't! Umbis's wife cried, but he remained undeterred. It only took a few minutes before the amber rose was gone. Only a rounded mound of soil remained. Have you gone mad? Umbis's wife cried. But her pleas were cut short by an unexpected jagged fork of lightning that lit up the whole sky. Booming claps of thunder followed and echoed all around them. Then the group found themselves scrambling for cover as raindrops the size of acorns began pelting down. Over there, directed Umbis. He led them away from the burning bush to a clump of large mushrooms. Their red caps served well as umbrellas, and the gnomes stood under them as the raindrops began to fall. Brogden, on the other hand, who was a foot tall and couldn't fit underneath a mushroom very comfortably, spied a pile of leaves and dove under it. The earth below the pile had a smell of decay, but the pile was so large that it covered him like a blanket, so he didn't mind. The rain continued, sounding like drums out of rhythm with each other. The sky sizzled with lightning and boomed with thunder as the ground rattled for what seemed like hours. Heavy droplets soaked the mound above the amber rose until it was saturated. That was when Brogden saw one of the most extraordinary sights of his life. Despite the rain, the tips of the leaves on the burning bush suddenly burst into flames. They licked out in all directions, first red, and then a verdant green, and then white. Sparks shot from every side, and it wasn't until each part of the bush had burned that the rain was able to douse the blaze. Then the remaining branches seemed to gather a peculiar kind of energy. They squeezed themselves into a tight ball and ignited again, burning even more furiously than before. A gust of wind tore the bush's roots out of the ground and lifted the fiery ball high into the air. And then it exploded. Glittery diamond-like confetti rained down to the ground. And when each piece of confetti reached the ground, it melted into the earth like an ice cube melts away in the hot sun. Gnomes from the Razvin and Lauren families heard the explosion, and they all came running to see what was going on. They all gathered at the spot where the burning bush had stood. No one could think of a thing to say. Mothers were placing their arms around the shoulders of their children, and the fathers were counting heads to be sure everyone was unharmed and accounted for. Twilina was the first to notice what was happening at the spot where the amber rose was planted. Look, she shouted. And that's where we'll stop. That's pretty amazing that all that occurred right after he planted the amber rose. And now something is happening where the amber rose is. So tomorrow we'll find out what that is, which means you have to come back tomorrow. That's right, Bookwormy. Come back tomorrow and we'll see what else happens. That was really cool. I know. We'll see you tomorrow.